Hello there, and another book review. And I'm reviewing a book called Intent, exploring the core of being human, by somebody called Etsko Schuitema. Etsko Schuitema. This is a South African name, Dutch South African name, and it's so I'll tell you a little bit about the author. Etsko Schuitema is a renowned business consultant who's authored numerous books, including Leadership and the Millennium Discourses. He's a senior partner in Schuitema, a transformation consultancy operating worldwide. Etsko's also a sheikh or teacher in the Shadili Darkawi Sufi tradition and is known as Sheikh Ibrahim. So, Intent, exploring the core of being human. I picked this up a while ago and I'd read another book by this chap called Millennium Discourses, which I really enjoyed. And when I picked this up, I found this a little bit hard going at first. Trying to understand the concepts was kind of difficult, and I left it for a few months, and then I came back to it and I started reading it again. And then I could see what he was talking about. And it took me a little while to get into it. It's basically about the intent. This is about literally exploring the core of being human. And what's really this is about is trying to explain in everyday language what our journey as a human being through life is, through the transformation of what's called intent, what we intend. And it's about giving you a kind of roadmap about that. Now, what does that actually mean? So, it's basically a transformational book, looking at the direction of growth of us as human beings. So the idea is that when we come into the world, we're really here to get. We just are here to get. And he describes this as a kind of open mouth, empty belly. All we want to do is take stuff in. But as time goes on, we realize that we can't get without having to compromise and be a certain way. So we have to give, but we're still giving in order to get. And by the time we get to a mature phase, we realize that actually we're here to give. So by the time, and he describes our kind of movement to the grave, and as the grave almost as an exam. And the grave is an exam where you have to basically give everything up. And if you don't give it up willingly, it's going to be taken off you anyway. And literally everything is going to be taken off you anyway. So for me, this really, it described things that I've seen in other courses or traditions as like giving up attachment. So that to me is what that is. And we're attached to almost everything in life. We're attached to our ego, our identity, our wealth, everything, our families, everything. And I think what he's trying to say is that by the end of your life cycle, it's about giving all that up. And I think what he's trying to say is giving it up in service. Although even that gets transformed at some point. So that was quite interesting. So he's got, he talks about obviously the theory of that, and it's a lot to go into because it's very tightly packed, this book. But there are various diagrams in it. So the book is full of diagrams which are quite useful. So you can see how there's a kind of, a direction of growth, in a direction where it goes to, immaturity is where the other is there to serve the self. And I suppose by the self, you could maybe talk about the ego, or sometimes in Islamic traditions, they talk about the nafs. And then maturity is where you realize that the self is there to serve the other. So that's kind of like a big part of it, where the idea is to not grant significance to yourself, but to grant significance to the other. and that's what makes life work. So he talks about the direction of growth of maturity in terms of the maturing of this intent. And then he talks about attention. I'm just getting my breakfast there. There's there's an example of somebody giving me something more mature than me. But there's like the first intention. Oh, cheers, thanks. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that amazing? Wow. Book review, breakfast. What more could you want? Saturday morning, doing stuff I enjoy. So, the thing is like the idea of he describes things as attentions and concerns and aspirations. So the attentions are like the first attention is I'm here to get, and this is the infantile attention, and it's all about I'm here to get, and then this encounters resistance from the other, and then the second intention is I give to get. This is a kind of adolescent phase, and there's conflict with the other because it's always a kind of tussle. I'm giving to get, and really, even when I'm trying to give something, it's really there to get something. And then the third attention is a more mature phase, and there's harmony and contentment, and you realize that you're here to give. Then he talks about the concerns, and he describes it in terms of the first concern, the second concern, the third concern, the fourth concern. So it's like a maturation of, like, the first concern is greed. It's all focused about your needs. And what enables you to transcend that is your frustration with your inability to have those needs being served. Then the second concern is about fear. It's a focus about rights. And what enables you to transcend that is the fear of you transcend the fear of not having enough or fear of provision. The third concern is generosity, and the focus is on duties. And what allows you to transcend that is the fear of ridicule. You don't care about what anybody says about you, and or being laughed at or being looking bad. And then the fourth concern is courage, where the focus that you have is on values, and the test that helps you to transcend that is the fear is the transcendence, is the fear of death. So that's quite interesting. I'm a big martial arts fan, and funnily enough, weirdly enough, I've got a Bruce Lee t-shirt on, which is a complete coincidence. And there's a movie called Game of Death, which Bruce Lee originally had an idea of going up these pagodas, and he fights a different opponent every stage. And the last opponent is a guy who has no fear of death. And that is like the ultimate thing that he has to fight. And it's weird, but this is almost like talking about that. So that eventually you lose your fear of death. And that is what enables you to, the value of courage is shown. And when you transcend that fear of death, or what in the Sufi tradition they call fana, or annihilation, I believe, then you are, I don't know, I guess, a realized person, and just get on and do what you need to do. But again, with enlightenment, they say, what do you do before enlightenment? Chop wood and carry water. And what do you do after enlightenment? Chop wood and carry water. So I guess it's an inner transformation. That's what this book is really about. And interesting, then he also talks about the aspiration. The first aspiration is about the body and what that's about. Second aspiration is emotions. So you're slave to your passions. I understand that. Then the third aspiration is where you're concerned with the mind. But again, it's like you're concerned with manipulating and using your mind to change things. Then the next aspiration is about community. And again, there's a need and a dependence there. Then the fifth aspiration is annihilation. And I think that's about service. And then the sixth aspiration is about just what's going on. And you surrender and you see things as they are and give everything its due. I don't think I fully understand these last bits and how that So it's, yeah, the sixth aspiration is unconditional surrender of the self, and and when you surrender yourself, there is contentment. That's the kind of model. Anyway, it's uh, Intent, Exploring the Core of Being Human by Etsko Schuitema. I think it was a useful book to read. It did take me a bit of time to get into it. Hope you enjoy that. I've actually got a few of this chap's books and I'm going to read them. And I think some of the stuff is maybe, it's like a lot of this transformational stuff. You've got to kind of read it a few times, let it sink in, and then you kind of understand. Because I think it is all about, I think if you understand it, and I think there is something about understanding something up here cognitively, but it doesn't go in, into the heart. I think that's something that, can only come with life experience as well. But I like this book, Intent, Exploring the Core of Being Human, by Etsko Schuitema. I think it's quite a good one to get. I read his other book, Millennium Discourses, enjoyed that, and I've got a few other ones that I will get through at some point. But I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that gives you some idea of what the book's about. I think this is one of these books that you've got to read and understand it for yourself. But it does give a good framework of I guess human maturation. And I suppose that's about what he's saying is really human maturation is about intent. It's not about how much money you accumulate or your status you accumulate or your family or anything like that. It's about your inner intent and where you're coming from with that. And that's what it indicates growth as a human being. So I hope you enjoy that. Take care. Bye. See you next review.